In the dense forests of North America, a creature of myth and legend is said to roam. Covered in hair from head to toe, standing over 7 feet tall, and leaving behind footprints that measure up to 24 inches long. This creature has sparked the curiosity and imagination of people around the world. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, Skunk Ape, and Yowie, among many others. This enigmatic being has been part of folklore and popular culture for centuries.
Bigfoot, its name, the common vernacular Bigfoot. Early miners and explorers would find these large tracks in the dirt. And whoa, Bigfoot. You know, very original. Kind of like the guy from Texas is named Tex.
So what secrets do these cryptic beings really hold? Could the legends be rooted in reality?
I love it all. I'm always in search of Bigfoot. So being born and raised in Washington State, one of the biggest hot spots in the whole world is Mount Adams area. So I love to climb mountains. I love to be out in nature and do adventures, sports, whatever you want to call it. So I spend a lot of time in the woods, and there are times where I'm by myself as well. And you feel, when you go in different places in the woods, you feel different energies as you're going through. Sometimes the hair will stand up on the back of your neck. Other times you'll feel like total euphoria, and yet you can't see anything around you. And you're like, you can't help but wonder, like, what is going on? There's clearly something going on here, but I can't see it.
The legend of Bigfoot has its roots in the indigenous cultures of North America. Native American tribes have shared stories of a large, hairy, human-like creature that roams the wilderness for generations. One such story comes from the Ojibwe tribe, native to the Great Lakes region of the United States and Canada. The Ojibwe people tell a tale of a giant, hairy, man-like creature known as Wendigo, or Wendigo. According to the legend, the Wendigo was once human, but after being possessed by an evil spirit, after resorting to cannibalism during a harsh winter, transformed into this monstrous being. The Wendigo is described as being incredibly tall, with a skeletal, emaciated appearance, despite its insatiable hunger for human flesh. Its eyes are said to be sunken and glowing, and its skin as tough as bark. Some say the Wendigo is a warning, a lesson, a symbol of the dangers of selfishness and greed. It reminds us to respect nature and each other. While the Wendigo differs from the Bigfoot commonly depicted in popular culture, there are similarities. Both are described as large, hairy, human-like creatures, and both are associated with the wilderness. Other Native American tribes have their own versions of Bigfoot. The Salish people of the Pacific Northwest, for example, tell stories of a creature known as Sasquatch, or Sasquatch. This creature is said to be a benign nocturnal being that lives in the mountains and the forests.
One gentleman is Tom Seawood. He's actually part of the Kwakwaka'wakw tribe in the Pacific Northwest, and he does tours and adventures all around Vancouver and Vancouver Island. And he's had a number of encounters. And being a full-fledged tribe member, he actually talks about their tribal beliefs of Bigfoot. For them, they have the Zunaqua, which is the wild woman of the woods. It's this big, hairy woman with a wicker basket. And it's kind of their version of a boogeyman. Don't go out at night. Listen to your parents. Don't go out and smoke cigarettes. Don't go out and steal food. Don't go out past 10. The Zunaqua will get you. And it's way, way back in their tradition. It was this big, hairy woman who would scoop bad children up, put her in the basket on her back, take them out and eat them. That was part of their tradition, kind of their boogeyman. And for as much as it was kind of their, to keep kids at night, don't scare them, there was also a real tradition. And the Kwakwaka'wakw tribe, each family has, some people have a thunderbird, some people have a cougar, some people have a bear, some people have a beaver, part of their creation story. and they're actual families that have a Sasquatch as their animal. And to them, they have them on their totem poles. It's just, there are no spirit animals and there are no flesh and blood animals. For a lot of them, it's one and the same. So a Sasquatch, a Thunderbird, a bear, a beaver, a squirrel, they're all the same to them, and they all recognize them as being there. That they also recognize that the Zunaqua, the male Zunaqua and the female Zunaqua, the wild woman of the woods, are referred to as the wild man or the tribe. They refer to them as people, quite interestingly. And if you go 1,500 miles to the south, they have the famous Hairy Man cave paintings, which date back 700 or 800 or 1,000 years ago. This cave where they have deer, they have elk, they have bears, and then they have these big, hulking, very creepy looking, large, cave paintings of what appear to be a Sasquatch. And it definitely looks like a Bigfoot. You see a big dad one, you see a mom one, and you see a baby one. And you say, well, what's the story behind the Hairy Man? And it's strikingly a lot like the Kwakwaka'wakw tribe. They say, hey, don't go out at night. The Hairy Man will get you. We hunt during the day. They hunt at night. Women shouldn't travel alone to go get water or anything because they'll abduct people. It's the Hairy Man. Don't go out at night. The Hairy Man will get you. And if you look all across virtually every tribe in the United States, from desert tribes to mountain tribes to the plains tribes, they all have a tradition of Bigfoot.
Their stories aren't just tales. They're part of their history, their culture, their way of understanding the world. Whether Bigfoot is a physical being, a spiritual entity, or a symbol, it has a place in their traditions.
And what, in North America, there's maybe 500 names for Bigfoot? Every tribe has their stories. Even the Vikings supposedly, encountered the big, hairy, smelly guys up in northern Canada, wherever else they landed.
I think it's kind of in our modern day hubris to think that we know everything and we're great now, and people 200 years ago were stupid or something. It's like, no, they really weren't. They're just as, they didn't consider, people 200 years ago didn't consider themselves old-fashioned. They considered themselves modern. They considered themselves educated. And in fact, not being as plugged in, they were probably way more aware of their surroundings and what were going on than we are today, by far, with all our digital distractions in our modern life. So I think it's very important to look at historical encounters.
Similar creatures appear in folklore of many cultures around the world. In the Himalayas, it's known as the Yeti. In the early 1950s, British mountaineer Eric Shipton was leading an expedition to Mount Everest. While traversing a high-altitude glacier, he and his team came across a series of large footprints in the snow. The footprints were about 12 inches long and appeared to be from a creature with a wide, barefoot stride. Shipton took several photographs of the footprints, which are some of the most famous images of Yeti footprints in existence. Shipton was an experienced mountaineer and had spent a lot of time in the Himalayas, so he was familiar with the footprints of other animals in the region. He claimed that the footprints did not match any known animal and believed that they were made by the Yeti. These photographs sparked a lot of interest and debate, and inspired several other expeditions to the region in search for more evidence of the Yeti. The story of Shipton's discovery is one of the most famous Yeti stories, and has contributed to the creature's status as a cultural icon and a symbol of the mysteries of the Himalayas.
These creatures are reported all over the world. Hundreds of reports, maybe thousands over the years. If one of them is legit, who's to say they aren't all legit?
The Bigfoot thing has always fascinated me, but I can't believe so many different names exist for them, and they don't exist. I've never seen God, but I believe he exists too.
Now in Australia, they call Bigfoot Yowie. In the late 1990s, a man named Bill O'Shea reported a Yowie sighting in the Gold Coast hinterland of Queensland, Australia. Bill was a former senator and a respected figure in the community, which added credibility to his account. Bill and a group of school students were on a retreat in a remote area. Late one night, while sitting around the campfire, they heard loud, heavy footsteps approaching in the dark. Thinking it might be a person, they called out, but received no response. Suddenly, a large, hairy creature, about 7 to 8 feet tall, emerged from the darkness and walked past their campsite. The creature did not show any signs of aggression and seemed indifferent to the group's presence. It walked upright on two legs, had a thick coat of hair, and a face that was a mix between human and ape. Bill and the students were terrified and watched in awe as the creature disappeared into the bush. The group did report the sighting to local authorities, but a search of the area didn't turn up any evidence of the creature. Bill O'Shea has stood by his account and is one of the most high-profile people to have ever reported a Yowie sighting. Stories like this one have contributed to the legend of the Yowie and have inspired many researchers and enthusiasts to search for the elusive creature in the Australian wilderness. Now, in South America, they call Bigfoot Mapinguari, said to inhabit the Amazon rainforest. Descriptions of the creature vary, and it's often described as a large, hairy, ape-like creature with long claws, backward-facing feet, and a mouth in its belly. Some indigenous tribes in the Amazon believe that the Mapinguari is a protector of the forest and will attack anyone who harms it. One of the most compelling accounts of a Mapinguari encounter comes from a retired Brazilian farmer named Dona Marcia. In 2003, Dona Marcia was working on her farm in a remote area of the Amazon when she heard a loud, growling noise coming from the edge of the forest. Thinking it might be a jaguar, she went to investigate. As she approached the source of the noise, she came face to face with a large, hairy creature that she described as having the appearance of a giant sloth standing on its hind legs. The creature had long, sharp claws and a powerful odor that made Dona Marcia feel dizzy. Terrified, she ran back to her home and locked herself inside. The creature approached her house and it circled several times, scratching at the walls and the windows, before eventually retreating back into the forest. Dona Marcia reported the encounter to local authorities, who were skeptical of her story. However, other farmers in the region have reported similar encounters with a creature matching the description of the Mapinguari.
Well, my specialty is a lot from a global perspective, because I believe that it's a species that exists worldwide, at least where it's possible.
You got to understand, everybody thinks of Bigfoot as the Pacific Northwest and California. The South, especially all through East Texas, they have a huge population of people that have experienced Sasquatches. East Texas is very famous, the land of LBL, the Florida skunk ape. You know, have you ever heard the expression, the boogeyman will get you, or the boogers? Well, down in the South, their term for Bigfoots are wood boogers. Watch out for the boogers. The boogers will get you, the wood boogers. You hear something snapping out in the woods, you hear something tromping around out there, something peeking in your tent. It's a wood booger. What it is a southern variety of Sasquatch. And as we encroach more and more into the woods and get out there more, and I think as their population actually grows, we're getting more and more encounters.
The first recorded sightings of Bigfoot in the modern era date back to the 19th century. In 1811, explorer David Thompson found large footprints in the Rockies, which he believed belonged to a giant bear. However, as more people ventured into the wilderness, sightings of a large, hairy, bipedal creature began to increase.
You look at all across the United States, and you look at what people are experiencing in like Maine and the Northeast, and compare that to the South, compare that to the West Coast, and compare that to the Pacific Northwest, Canada. There's a lot of similarities, but there are differences from what they're describing. There are differences in temperament of the animals. You know, in the Pacific Northwest and in Canada, people, 8, 9, 10 foot tall Sasquatch. In the South, people, they're about 7.5 foot tall, 8 foot tall at the most. One of the things in biology research is Bergman's rule. The farther north you go, the bigger animals tend to be. Bears and mountain lions tend to be bigger when you go north. Not always. There are some animals that get smaller, but even a coyote in the desert could weigh 10 pounds. It's going to be 40 pounds up in the north or in higher areas. They got to be a bigger, robust species.
In the 20th century, there was a surge in Bigfoot sightings. Some believe this was due to more people exploring the wilderness, while others think it was a result of the creature's growing popularity in popular culture.
I had an encounter with my brother-in-law at my father-in-law's property in the Sierras, And we were on that fire road and we were hunting. We were coyote hunting. He set out this coyote call, which is this horrible speaker. You press buttons and it does wounded rabbit call and dying calf's call and rah, rah, and it was echoing all through the canyon. I'd kind of been into Bigfoot before that, like interested. You watch the shows on TV and stuff. But we're up there and we're all camouflaged out and we got our rifles and we're all hiding in the bushes. And I just remember thinking to myself, predator call. Wow, I wonder if we call in something else other than coyotes. We're sitting there, it's starting to get dark, kind of getting really hard to see. I kind of hear something behind me coming through the leaf litter, and it's almost like a squirrel or like a step, then a step, but it's pretty far behind me and it's faint, and whoosh, a rock, big old rock, flies right over my shoulder, crunches in the dirt. Bounce up, I start looking around. What was that? My brother-in-law kind of jumps back, and we're looking at each other and we're like, what was that? Was that a coyote? He's like, I don't know. We should get out of here. So we very quickly just basically got up and left. And on the way out, he grabbed his call. And we're on the fire road going back to the main road. And we could hear footsteps behind us. We'd hear 2 or 3 steps. We'd take a few steps and we could kind of hear something behind us. And we turn around with our flashlights. Hello, anybody there? Couldn't see anything. We'd take a few steps and it sounded like something was trailing us out. And every once in a while you'd hear a tree snap or something behind us, and then you'd hear maybe something else. Come to find out, there are a lot of Bigfoot sightings in this area. That particular encounter was very physical, was very here. I did feel a pretty good sense of dread that day, because I didn't know what was going on. Something's throwing a rock, and we got rifles and we got flashlights and stuff. We can't see. We know something's out there. Something threw a rock. There's footsteps. It's really fascinating when you get in there, and then you start to think, well, maybe there is more to this Bigfoot thing.
Probably the most famous Bigfoot sighting is the Patterson-Gimlin film. Shot in 1967 in Northern California, the film shows a large, hairy, bipedal creature walking across a clearing. The footage sparked a wave of interest in Bigfoot and remains one of the most analyzed pieces of video footage to this day.
If you want 2 really good pieces, the best evidence that actual scientists, actual biologists, actual people have broken down and can prove through frame rates, through size comparisons, locomotions, combined with eyewitness reports. One is the Patterson-Gimlin film, the one that was filmed in Bluff Creek in 1967. That has been dissected a million ways. Dr. Jeff Meldrum. There's a lot of independents that have done their breakdowns of it. And from the proportions, it can't be a man in a suit because the legs are too long, the arms are too long, and if you did an arm extension to make an arm longer, the elbow would stay in the same place. Things that don't add up with that film. Not to mention the historical of that area, there being a lot of Bigfoot encounters, the way the thing moves, the muscle tone.
I think it's because the Patterson-Gimlin film is so clear, especially now it's been cleaned up. I saw a second generation copy, and it's, you know, I'm not going to go 100% in with it, but it's pretty impressive. You can literally see the muscles, you know, contracting and moving. So no one has been able to debunk it. I mean, there's been 7 guys that claim to be in a suit, but none of them have proven that they were in a suit, and that's like literally 7 people, so they couldn't all have been in the suit. It's an impressive, you know, piece of footage. I've never met Patterson. I've met Gimlin a couple times, you know, and he's a really affable guy, you know, and it's hard to see him lying about it. I think that if it was a hoax, he wasn't in on it.
Over the years, there have been many other famous sightings and videos as well. While some have been debunked as hoaxes or misidentifications, some remained unexplained and continue to fuel the mystery surrounding Bigfoot. Many eyewitnesses describe similar characteristics: a tall, hairy creature with a human-like face, broad shoulders, and a distinct foul odor. These commonalities lead credence to the theory that there may indeed be an unknown creature lurking in the forest.
First time I ever heard of one, and I grew up in the woods down the south end of Monroe County. I've been in the woods all my life. I was stationed at the Marine Barracks in Bremerton, Washington, and I first heard about them there, and they called them Sasquatches. And I had guys that claimed they'd seen one.
Footprints are some of the most compelling physical evidence of Bigfoot's existence. Over the years, thousands of tracks have been found, some measuring up to 24 inches long. Experts have analyzed many of these tracks and found anatomical features that suggest they could not have been faked. However, Others argue that it would be relatively easy to create fake tracks. Hair samples that are said to have been from a Bigfoot have also been found. However, most have been identified as belonging to known animals, while others remain inconclusive. Hoaxes and misidentification have also played a significant role in the Bigfoot phenomenon. One of the most famous Bigfoot hoaxes involves Ray Wallace, a logger from Washington State. In 1958, workers at one of Wallace's logging sites in Northern California reported finding giant footprints around their equipment. The footprints were reported in a local newspaper, and the story quickly gained national attention. This was one of the first times the term Bigfoot was used, and the incident is often credited with starting the modern Bigfoot phenomenon. Years later, after Ray Wallace's death in 2002, his family revealed that the footprints were a hoax. Wallace had carved a set of wooden feet and used them to create the footprints around the logging site. The family even produced the wooden feet as evidence. Despite this revelation, many Bigfoot enthusiasts believe that the Wallace footprints are just one of many hoaxes and do not discredit all footprint evidence. In 2008, Rick Dyer and Matthew Whitten, two residents of Georgia, claimed to have found the body of a dead Bigfoot in the woods of northern Georgia. They released photos of the body, which they said they had stored in a freezer, and held a press conference announcing their discovery. The story quickly went viral, and many in the Bigfoot community were excited about the possibility of finally having definitive proof of the creature's existence. However, it wasn't long before suspicions arose. Dyer and Whitten were unable to produce any concrete evidence to back up their claims, and experts who examined the photos noted that the body looked suspiciously like a costume. Eventually, under pressure from the media and the Bigfoot community, Dyer admitted that the body was indeed a rubber suit filled with roadkill. Dyer's hoax was particularly damaging to the Bigfoot community because it was so widely publicized and because Dyer and Whitten went to great lengths to convince people of its authenticity. Despite this setback, many Bigfoot enthusiasts continue to search for evidence of the creature's existence, hopeful that one day they will find the proof that they are looking for.
But like I was saying with UFO stuff, always had an interest in the paranormal. And when you look at Bigfoot, you're like, you want something to be there, and you start looking at the evidence and you're like, there is something there. And then you start experiencing it and you're like, I don't believe, I know there's something there.
I absolutely 100% believe Bigfoot exists. I think we have enough evidence out there to suggest that that species is real.
There are many theories about what Bigfoot could be. Some believe it's a relic hominid, a descendant of an ancient human ancestor.
Well, so originally the original model when I came out of school was that we had the split between us and the apes 7 million years ago, right, theoretically? We didn't know anything prior to that. We knew very little about gorillas and chimps. Evolutionary history past that because there aren't a lot of fossil. The biggest ape we had, Gigantopithecus, extinct about 300,000 years ago, but all we had was teeth and a little bit of a jawbone, so we knew very little. On the human side, we went straight from Australopithecus down to Homo habilis to Homo erectus, and eventually gave way to Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. And those are the only two that were known to live side by side. In the last 10 years, that's changed dramatically.
It's a good filter to put on when you're looking at the Bigfoot subject, because when you look at like the stuff that Dr. Meldrum and even Cliff Barackman does, where they look at the morphology of tracks, the type of locomotion, the weight, the build of the foot, the structure of the body based on a foot, the positioning of bones being different than a human when you upscale. Because if you take a human and you upscale him to 800 pounds, we're not very proportioned for that. But if you move some leg bones and make some things thicker and some things wider, you could very easily get a bipedal creature that big and have it be very, very fast. So when you look at the anthropology section of it, it gets into that and explains a lot of the physicality of these creatures and what people report.
Others think it could be an unknown species of ape or even an extraterrestrial being.
I think it's, some people say Gigantopithecus, which I think could be a very good explanation for these things?
This is one of the most popular theories among Bigfoot enthusiasts. It suggests that Bigfoot is a surviving member of a prehistoric species of hominid, possibly Gigantopithecus or Homo erectus, that has managed to survive into modern times in remote wilderness areas.
There's a theory that modern Bigfoot is a descendant of Gigantopithecus or Gigantopithecus blacki. They've really only found some jaw fragments and some teeth from it, but they've kind of extrapolated. And there's some debate in the zoological world if they were upright or if they were more like a big walking gorilla or if they were more like a Sasquatch. But from what they can extrapolate, that might be very close to what a Bigfoot would really look like. You know, 7, 8, 9, 10 feet tall, 1,000-pound, giant orangutan-looking ape, which some people describe.
We discovered about some apes prior to our theoretical split with the chimps about 8 to 9 million years ago that might have been geared towards becoming bipedal. And since then, we've discovered a plethora of human species, the hominids, in Africa, in Europe, that lived side by side with Homo sapiens, Neanderthal, Denisovans. We had Homo floresiensis in Asia that was alive 40,000 years ago. In Africa, there's Homo naledi, which was alive 200,000 years ago. And they had really small brains like Australopithecus. They're very, very primitive, but completely bipedal. So the model where certain primitive traits were wiped out through evolution doesn't exist anymore. Now we know it's possible to have something like Bigfoot. Whether any of those became Bigfoot or cousins to Bigfoot, we don't know, right? Genetics, they'll tell that story down the line. But the possibilities now are a lot more open than they were, at least when I was in school.
Supporters of this theory point to the numerous Bigfoot sightings and footprint evidence as proof that such a creature could exist. Critics argue that there is still no concrete evidence, such as bones or DNA, to support this theory, and that the available evidence can be explained by other means, such as hoaxes or misidentified animals.
We know from samples that we have taken that it is a primate. The samples that we had tested was actually blood. Had a geneticist test it. The first thing they come back with is, well, it's definitely not a human. The second thing they come back with was, it's definitely a primate, but it's not a primate in any of the scientific journals or anything else. It's an undocumented, unclassified ape. So we know it's a primate, and we know it's not human.
The unknown primate theory suggests that Bigfoot is a species of primate unknown to science that lives in remote forests of North America. Proponents of this theory argue that there are still many unexplored areas in the world where unknown species could exist, and point to the discovery of other previously unknown large animals. Skeptics argue that it's unlikely that a large primate could remain undetected for so long, given the extensive exploration and development of North America.
To me, I was always a big animal lover as a kid, and the fact that we can have an animal that's very similar to man, that was still around in the world, that was undiscovered. I've always loved exploration. I was a kid, I always wanted to go around the corner. And to me, that was like the ultimate corner, as a child. And it was like romantic fantasy in a lot of ways, but it seemed so real.
All the descriptions are virtually the same. Every one I've heard, and I've heard hundreds of them.
Each one of these creatures has, they're different just like humans. They have a different facial feature to them. There's similarities, but they all have a little bit of difference to them. But you can expect the deep, dark set eyes, the heavy brow ridge. They'll have blocky teeth, but they will have canines. The mouth will be real wide. It'll be just like a slit. It'll be very, very small lips. You won't be able to see much on the lips. They're just very small, and a wide mouth. Ears will be small, close to the head. If you come across a big alpha male, he may have long hair hanging off his head onto his shoulders. They may be really hairy or may be sparsely haired, and of course it could have to do with the seasons too, the colder months and the warmer months.
As man has gone more towards civilization, these things just went deeper into the woods, and they're the ultimate survivalists, and they are. They're smart. They ain't gonna crank your car and drive a truck off, but they're very intelligent. They know how to survive.
If you got a big an alpha male, an old alpha male, man, he may be 10, 11, 12 foot tall. But on average, you're going to see 7 to 8 foot tall on average.
There are some stories you get where it looks a lot like a man in the face, but most of the reports around here look more like a gorilla. But one of the good reports that I had was one drowning a deer, and I've got a video of that, you know, where the man was working on a camp pass on the river, and there's not many things around here that's going to drown a 150-pound deer, but you can hear the deer hollering. And you can see something reaching towards it, and it looks like it has a snout.
Skeptics argue that it's unlikely that a large primate could remain undetected for so long, given the extensive exploration and development of North America.
A lot of people in the field of cryptozoology, now cryptozoology means the study of unknown animals, you know, just like an unknown ape that hasn't been found yet, or some class of fish that hasn't been found. That's, in definitive terms, that's what cryptozoology is. But over the years, a lot of other weirder creatures have been reported, that people have seen Bigfoot type creatures vanish in a flash of light, or they've been seen at the same location and time as UFOs and Bigfoot together. You know, a lot of people in cryptozoology have no time for those stories. They're just unknown animals.
This theory suggests that Bigfoot is a supernatural or interdimensional being that can appear and disappear at will, which is why it is so elusive and difficult to capture. Some versions of this theory suggest that Bigfoot is a shapeshifter, a guardian of the forest, or even an extraterrestrial. While this theory is popular among some segments of the Bigfoot community, it is not widely accepted by mainstream scientists or researchers, who generally prefer a more naturalistic explanation.
I start coming up with my own theory, my personal theory, and I think it should be something we should look at, based upon the evidence that's out there. We as humans tend to have pets. We have pets. And if you had a house in the middle of nowhere, maybe in the mountains, maybe out in the woods, it's complete darkness, you decide to let your pet out to use the restroom, to relieve itself. And when the door opens, that's the remnants of some light, because you can see it from afar. It's just, psh, that's all you see. Now, when the pet goes out and does its business, we're going to start getting the smell of what's happening, which, of course, Bigfoot probably does it big time, okay? It's bigger than most cases, so this is a big smell, okay? So I started thinking, could Bigfoot be pets of the extraterrestrials? So they cloak their spaceships, and they let it out to take a break. And now, this is why we can't track it, can't find it. And people think, okay, it's shapeshifts, because I don't believe it has the wherewithal for technology. It's not speaking. It's not using, ray guns and suits. It's still got a primitive thing to it. So could it be a pet? And this is why the track stops. This is why we're smelling what we're smelling for that moment. And it disappears out of nowhere, and why we can't find it. That's my concept.
The misidentification theory suggests that Bigfoot sightings are actually just misidentifications of known animals, such as bears, large dogs, or even humans. Proponents of this theory argue that the human mind is susceptible to suggestion, and that in the excitement of the moment, it's easy to misinterpret what one is seeing. They also point to the lack of concrete evidence, such as bones or DNA, as evidence that Bigfoot doesn't exist. Critics of this theory argue that it does not explain all the available evidence, such as the consistency of Bigfoot descriptions across different sightings, or the large human-like footprints that have been found. Despite the lack of definitive evidence, many researchers and enthusiasts continue to believe in Bigfoot's existence and are dedicated to finding the truth. Scientists study Bigfoot with a healthy dose of skepticism, using various methods and approaches, all aiming to understand if there is indeed a large unknown primate living in remote areas of the world. They do this through many different methods. One is field research. Scientists and researchers spend time in areas where Bigfoot sightings have been reported. They collect physical evidence such as hair, feces, or footprints, which can be analyzed for DNA or other identifiable traits. Trail cameras are also set up in hopes of capturing images of video footage of the creature. Scientists study reports of Bigfoot sightings, looking for patterns or consistencies that might indicate the presence of an unknown creature. They may also interview witnesses to gather more information about their sightings. Any physical evidence collected, such as hair, feces, or footprints, is analyzed in a laboratory. DNA analysis can be used to determine the species of the creature that left the evidence. Footprints can be analyzed to determine the size and weight of the creature that made them. Scientists compare the evidence collected with known animals to see if it matches any existing species. They may also compare the evidence to that of known hoaxes to determine its authenticity.
When I go out in the field, the first thing I look for obviously is an area that not just has had sightings, I think that's overrated, but an area that makes sense biologically in terms of having resources, shelter, food, water. Also, it has a long history of sightings, not just modern sightings, right? So, and then when you go out in the woods, you look for signs. For example, broken tree branches. And granted, that's a little overrated. Everybody, unfortunately, that's been featured on Finding Bigfoot, and now everybody thinks that every broken branch in the woods is Bigfoot. The truth is, you go after the snow will break branches when it melts and so forth. But if you can find branches that are twisted, for example, and really big tree trunks that have been moved, or it's a little more intriguing,
If I'm going to an area I've never been before, or an area I haven't been in a long time, I go online and I just the very first thing I do is background research. But also, if you take a look, you just Google Earth, you realize there's hundreds of miles of trees and woods that not only is there no people around, people have probably never been other than flown over. Very rugged terrain. And there's lots of hiding places, even, a quarter mile off of a road, and you're in some really deep, steep country that no one's going to, no one's back there, lots of places to hide. So I start by looking at historical encounters. Where have people seen before? What trailheads and what areas? Then I look at maps, start saying what are some areas, where's water. I always love to look in August, October, especially in Southern California, the driest time of the year. Because if I can find water on a trail or an area, an old dried up pond, a creek that's dried up but still has pools, if I can find water in October in California, there's going to be animals around, because that's the hottest, driest time of the year, because it's had all summer to dry out. There hasn't been any snow or any rain. So I look for water sources, how close are they to main roads, food sources, hunting areas, protected areas. And from there, if I actually go out there, when you're actually in the woods, they're way better trackers and people than me, but I'm looking at tracks. I'm looking for tree breaks and snaps of something going through the woods. I'm always looking up at the high ground, because the high ground's important. If you see what looks like a bunch of trees falling over, well, maybe they're not falling over on accident. Maybe that's a blind. You got to think like a hunter. You'd want to obscure your area to watch a trail. The trail that you're on might be a human footpath, but are there game trails? You see other little trails going up and off all over the place. Well, this is for animals to go. Animals like using trails, because like humans, trails are easier than just walking through the bushes.
But the next step is a lot more interesting to me. Is something that's called a ground nest. Now, people have reported, I've never found one, but people have reported seeing kind of like a ground nest like gorillas make. Gorillas sleep in nests. So if you can find these odd features, in the landscape, like a nest that seems to be out of place a little bit, it's a good sign. Next, you look for step 2, which is tracks. And obviously you have to know the difference between bear tracks and Bigfoot tracks, which isn't always easy. I'm sure I've been fooled. I'd like to not think I don't get fooled, but we all do. Sometimes it can be pretty similar. And then, obviously, then you start listening for sounds, weird sounds like some kind of howling so ultimately all that's crap, because it's useless, right? You just tell a story, and a lot of people are satisfied with that. It annoys me. I think we need a lot better evidence than that. Otherwise, it's pointless. Ultimately, you want hair samples, blood sample. That's the only thing that's really going to lead to the next step.
So why do scientists study Bigfoot? One reason could be the discovery of a new species. If Bigfoot does exist, it would be one of the most significant zoological discoveries of the century. It could provide new insights into human evolution, primate behavior, and the ecology of remote wilderness areas. Then there's public interest. Bigfoot is a creature that has captured the public imagination for decades. There's a great deal of interest in determining whether or not it actually exists. Then there's conservation. If Bigfoot does exist, it would likely be a critically endangered species. Understanding its habitat, behavior, and needs would be crucial for its conservation and protection. Studying an elusive creature like Bigfoot presents many challenges. Bigfoot is said to inhabit remote and inaccessible areas, which makes it difficult for researchers to conduct thorough investigations. Dense forests, mountainous terrain, and a lack of roads or trails can make it challenging to access and survey the areas where Bigfoot sightings have been reported. Human memory and perception are not always reliable, and eyewitness accounts can vary widely in detail and accuracy. Researchers must take this into account when interviewing witnesses and assessing their reports. Bigfoot research is not widely regarded as a legitimate scientific endeavor by the mainstream scientific community. As a result, researchers often struggle to secure funding for their investigations, which can limit the scope and quality of their work. The image of Bigfoot has been deeply ingrained in popular culture, which can influence people's perceptions and interpretations of what they see in the wild. This cultural influence can make it difficult for researchers to assess eyewitness accounts objectively. This is the tendency for humans to ascribe human characteristics to non-human entities. When people encounter something unknown in the wilderness, their brains might automatically fill in the gaps with familiar images, such as a human or a large primate, even if what they saw was a different animal altogether. Despite these challenges, there are researchers and scientists dedicated to studying Bigfoot. Here are some examples of some widely regarded good evidence. The most famous piece of evidence is, of course, the Patterson-Gimlin film. Then there's the Skookum cast of 2000. In 2000, a group of Bigfoot researchers in Washington State found a large impression in the mud, which they believe was made by a Bigfoot lying down. The impression showed detailed anatomical features, and researchers made a plaster cast of it. Some experts, including wildlife biologists and forensic anthropologists, believe the cast shows evidence of an unknown primate, while others believe it was made by an elk or another known animal. Paul Freeman, a Bigfoot researcher, captured footage of what he claimed to be a Bigfoot in the Blue Mountains of Washington State. The footage shows a large, hairy creature walking through the woods. While some experts believe the footage is genuine, others have questioned its authenticity.
Also, if you look at the Paul Freeman video, that's a pretty good one. Just kind of use your judgment. For me, if it feels fake, it's probably fake. If it looks real, don't say it's 100% real, but observe what you know. Look at the motion. Does it look like a creature? How is the hair sticking to it? Does it look baggy like an oversized fur suit? Is there muscle tone? What can you see? How are the proportions? Are they non-human proportions?
So the biggest complaint I get is that why isn't Bigfoot captured on video or in pictures all the time? And part of me has no answer, because I agree we should really be getting better evidence, and maybe the evidence is out there, but it's not public. Now, I've seen some private couple pictures that are actually pretty good. Not maybe Patterson-Gimlin good, but pretty close. And there's some footage even on YouTube that I think it's pretty intriguing if you know what you're looking for. But there's 80% of those you see on YouTube are hoaxes, and even Bigfoot experts get fooled. I'm sure I've been fooled by a couple, but some people should know better. I think a lot of people go to the wrong place. They kind of go out in the field after there's been a sighting, and you're where Bigfoot was. You're not where he's going to be or where he is. You're talking about an intelligent biological species. I think you have to go a lot deeper in the woods if you're really going to get some quality footage. And look, and I've been out there, right? I've been in the woods. Man, it's hard to get around. You're moving like, a mile per like couple hours sometimes, The species that's adapted specifically to that environment if he wants to stay out of sight. Especially we're talking fur color that can camouflage with the trees very easily. It's hard, man. It's hard to get a lot of pictures and footage out there. But I agree, that's the main skeptic point that we should have a better answer for, and I don't have one.
In 1969, a series of unusual footprints were found near Bossburg, Washington. The footprints appeared to be from a large bipedal creature with a deformity in its right foot. Casts were made of the tracks, and some experts believe that they show anatomical details that would be difficult to fake.
It was out in North Bend, Washington, up in the backwoods, Mount Garfield. There was a night and I was sitting by the fire and this crazy noise, like I still to this day can't repeat it. I try to be like, oh, you know, it's not like a howl, but it was, whatever it was, I'd never heard it before. I went online and tried to Google all these different animal sounds and what animals are capable of. Couldn't find anything even remotely close. But that night when I was sitting by the fire and that sound was coming through, it sounded like something was walking through, and it was very alarmed that we were there. And it was letting us know, like, hey, I'm here, I'm coming through, like, and the hair stood up on the back of my neck, so I knew that it was to alarm me, and because it felt alarmed. The noise went on for maybe 5 minutes, however long it took for it to pass by, and then it took like a solid 30 minutes sitting by a fire, just frozen, being like, all right, what am I gonna do if something goes down here, you know?
Ron Moorhead and Alan Berry recorded a series of vocalizations in the Sierra Nevada mountains that they believe were made by Bigfoot. The vocalizations included a range of sounds, from whistles to growls to high-pitched chattering. Some linguistic experts believe the sounds show evidence of language, while others believe they were made by known animals or are hoaxes.
The other one that I've met and talked to several times, he's a great researcher, is Ron Moorhead and his Sierra Sounds. In the 70s, in a hunting camp deep in the Sierras, he recorded and he had interactions with 4 or 5 of his hunting buddies. Now, it's like you got to take horses and pack in 2 or 3 days to go to this hunting camp in the middle of nowhere, which his camp was surrounded by these creatures, these hairy bipedal creatures. Not only were they whooping and hollering and making a lot of strange noises, but they were actually talking to each other, and you could hear this garbled language. Some people call it samurai chatter because it's very, it's this very weird, it almost sounds like a foreign language. So when he had all this recorded and he brought it to linguistical experts, language experts, military grade stuff, people that work for the Pentagon trying to break codes and translate things, and they broke down and they said, well, there's a number of phenomena that's going on here in the Sierra Sounds. One, they can tell the same creature is reaching octaves higher and lower than humans can do, almost to the set of having a second set of vocal cords. And a lot of people with the classic Sasquatch calls that you hear, it starts off really low and then goes into a high-pitched scream, way beyond any human or animal can do. But the other thing they encountered with the Sierra Sounds is not only were there frequency and optical phenomenon that couldn't be human or any known animal, but they also found markers of language, the same phrases and words, if you will, being repeated over and over again, having 2 or 3 or more creatures talking back and forth, saying their equation of a sentence or phrases being responded by more sentences and phrases, different than this one, different than that, and it had all the markers of language. Now, we don't know what they're saying, but it had all the markers of language as human language as we know it.
In 2009, a Georgia police officer captured footage of a large hairy creature crossing the road in front of his patrol car. The footage was captured on the officer's dash cam at night, and while it's difficult to make out details of the creature, it appears to be large, bipedal, and covered in hair. The officer and a few other witnesses reported that the creature was definitely not a bear or a human. A group of hikers captured footage of a large hairy bipedal creature on Marble Mountain in California. The creature appears to be observing the group from behind a tree before retreating further up the mountain. The footage is grainy and shot from a distance, but the creature appears to be much larger than a human and moves with a gait that some experts believe is consistent with a large primate.
There was one guy, he was on his way home, I remember, and he crossed this creek, this bridge, and almost immediately after he crosses the bridge, he sees this Bigfoot kind of clawing into a tree, and his idea was that there was some type of food, or maybe like an insect or something like that the thing was trying to get and eat. But this guy told me it shook him up so bad, and this was a big grown man, you know, that was coming home from working in a factory, and he said he was never taking that way home again. I mean, it legitimately spooked him.
Harley Hoffman captured footage of what he claimed to be a Bigfoot in the woods of northeast Ohio. The footage shows a large, hairy creature walking through the woods. Hoffman claimed that he saw the creature while hiking and began to film it. The footage is shaky and the creature is partially obscured by trees, but it appears to be large and covered in hair. Critics argue that the video is too shaky and the creature could easily be a person in a costume.
I'm not a believer. I'm a knower. I know Bigfoots exist. That's because of my first-hand eyewitness accounting right here in these very woods. I mean, I saw it dead in the eyes. But people, they dismiss me. They say stuff like, oh, if they exist, then where are all the bones, the bodies? But maybe that's just it. Maybe the reason we can't find these Bigfoots is because they're not Bigfoots all the time, you know? Like sort of werewolf type situation.
Bigfoot has become a cultural icon, appearing in movies, TV, shows, books, and advertisements. Its image has been used to sell everything from beef jerky to insurance. Bigfoot merchandise is a big business. The creature's popularity shows no signs of waning, and its image continues to captivate the imaginations of people around the world.
For me, Bigfoot was always, I don't even remember when the first time I heard about it. I mean, at 7 or 8 years old, you could probably go back in time and ask me, you know what Bigfoot is? Like, yeah, he's a big hairy man. So I remember seeing Harry and Anderson's when I was a kid, because that came out in the 80s. Some of the old In Search Of stuff with Leonard Nimoy. There was always some kind of, and there still is to this day, there's always some kind of a documentary or special where they have the Patterson-Gimlin film.
As long as there are dense forests and unexplored wilderness, the legend of Bigfoot will continue to thrive. And for many, the quest to unravel the mystery of this enigmatic creature will continue.